So hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you all to a special edition of The Main Column. We are live at the ECC Sponsors Only session. I'm your host, Lee Nichols, and we got a very special guest join us today, Dan Huben from Evonik. How you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. Well, and I know we got a lot to get to today, and I really want to thank you for giving us a couple minutes of your time. So just to kind of start off for the engineering construction industry, what are some of the major challenges that you're seeing currently in this industry?
That's a pretty expansive question. And I would say that, in my experience, and again, I approach capital projects more from the engineering side than I do from the construction sides. And we like to say that people are our number one resource. Mm-hmm. And I would say that one of the challenges that I'm seeing these days versus earlier in my career is just the ability to get and retain and train and take advantage of good people that are in the marketplace. Okay. It seems that we have a couple of culture wars going on at the same time. We still have baby boomers in the industry that are driving a lot of the decision making. Us Gen Xers trying to come in and put some influence in that. But then we also are, a lot of the folks that are coming through are in the millennial generation and even younger. And it's almost a cultural warfare there. And so there's challenges to the industry, and we have more people retiring or leaving the industry than we have coming in, which is creating vacancies.
Right.
And we are still facing the challenges that have been with us all along: schedule-driven, time to market, and with fewer and fewer resources to be able to do that. There's a resultant higher dependency on technology and tools and whiz-bang things, ChatGPT, AI, and I don't think that the technology has matured to the point where it can take the place of people.
Right. Yeah.
And we're losing, through retirement, we're losing a lot of the technical capacity that the industry once had, and through the time of transit of the younger engineers in their roles, because there's a lot more jumping around than there used to be. We're not able to effectively mentor and bring them up. So there is a gap, and as expectations on the industries increase to make more profit, to be quicker, to less injury prone, and things of that nature, I just find that we're struggling it, and we're hiding behind other excuses such as supply chain issues and just other technologies that are emerging that haven't been there yet. But I think the core issue is that it's a high cost to pay to get in the industry. Whether you're in engineering, you have to go through a 4-year degree, or then you have to get your licensing, or if you're a general contractor, you got to carry what seems to be billions of dollars now in insurances, and then the only ones that seem to have really benefited from all this is either Wall Street, which is sometimes good, and legal. Yeah. So again, I'd say that the challenge is that I think we have to negotiate through this, what I call a culture war, and figure out how we can take advantage of the people that are there, match them with the correct technology, and then really do a better job of level setting the expectations of the industry on what we can actually perform and what we cannot. I think in a lot of cases, especially in CapEx, we're just running into walls and trying to figure it out and put the pieces back together after the fact.
Yeah. Now, and those workforce issues I know have been around for a while. And I'm just kind of curious about how you can mitigate that, like how you can get more people, especially those younger engineers that see something like big and bright, like I want to go design iPads and iPods and I want to do that, versus I want to go into, let's say, refining and petrochemical plants, or even engineering side, like you're talking about CapEx projects and things like that. I don't know if there's a short answer there. That's
I don't think there's a short answer, because again, everything takes a multifaceted approach. For example, we have to find a better way of attracting the younger talent into the industry. When you're graduating from college, say with an electrical engineering degree, do you want to go build Amazon plants, or do you want to move to some place in South Dakota? And not that there's anything wrong with South Dakota, but when you think of the differences between coastal California, Silicon Valley, or midpoint USA, the challenges of attracting those people into this industry is a little bit more difficult. Then you also have projects that are awarded, I think, based on the availability of headcount. And again, I'm only going to speak specifically to projects, not necessarily to operation. And so there's a lot of in-company or intra-company stealing and theft of resources, or just a lot of migration, people moving down the street for a quarter, so to speak, and I think that we're ultimately pricing the labor out of the market, especially when the low bid wins type of thing, and you can't get low bid unless you have the right pricing structure, but you can't get there with the labor that you have, so you got corners elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you have this, whatever we want to call an immigration policy. You can't tell me that everybody on the border is destined to be a gardener or a roofer. I mean, there has to be some craft labor tracked in there somewhere, but we don't necessarily have a large-scale training or apprenticeship program to bring those people into the skilled trades. And so we have an abundance of unskilled labor, but we don't have really a good mechanism anymore to skill them. And then when we're also evaluating how to bring in already skilled labor in, say, the more professional ranks, over the past 3 years, I'd say that obtaining visas, even just basic level entry work visas, have become monumentally more difficult to attain than they had previously. And so I think that we have to find a better mechanism of skilling up the labor and then take advantage of what's already here, and then also just finding a way to get people interested. Within the marketplace, I think that we're trying to tackle that in a couple different ways. One of those is it is difficult to get people to move to remote locations, and I think we're starting to take more advantage of modularity, that buzzword from a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's shops that are nearer to population centers that have a greater draw on the skilled labor that's available, and then we can ship them off to the more remote locations, and then not necessarily need so much skilled labor there to assemble it.
Okay. I got you. Yeah. And I totally understand about being able to build that labor force and having those mechanisms in place to actually train those people up, to have them go into the, I know certain companies are actually doing that, but man, I bet we could use a lot more of that.
We could. And the other difficulty is that there's no immediate answer. So an old boss of mine said the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. Yeah. And I think that's where we are. We want immediate results, and there's going to be a lot of failures that happen and that seek for immediacy. But I think that if we, as an industry, start putting better measures into place, maybe 5, maybe 10 years, we'll be in a much better place than we are today.
Okay. And I know that, of course, workforce is one of the challenges that are facing engineering construction industry. And that's kind of like a segue into where I wanted to go next with one of the reasons we're here is kind of a build up to the ECC Annual Conference, which is in late August. So with that conference, I know it really focuses on some of the challenges in the industry. But for people that might not be familiar with the ECC Annual Conference, can you talk a little bit more about what it is, what people could expect if they attend, and some other benefits that might come from it?
It's actually one of the best conferences that not too many people ever heard about. And I was first exposed to it by walking down the hallway, and my boss at the time said, "Huben, what are you doing this weekend?" I don't know. I went to a conference, and it actually was, from a professional perspective, life-changing. The reason why I think it's so good is it's unlike a lot of other professional societies and organizations is that it's not about advancing a particular approach. There's not recommended practices. There's not a lot of stuff that normally goes along with going to a conference. And I think what's unique about ECC is that it draws almost fairly equally from both owners, contractors, and suppliers. And what's really awesome about it is that you go there and, there's some salesmanship that happened, but for the most part, people just sit down at a table and start talking about what's going on in the industry. And there's a lot of sharing of what the problems are behind their curtain. And the first point that comes out is that whatever problem you're facing, the person that's across the table from you, even if they're a direct competitor and even if they're kicking your butt at that point in time, they're having the exact same problem that you are. And I think with ECC is, from an industry perspective, it's the industry first. It's not my company over your company. And I think that there's a benefit to that. And not only is there, say a common problem, we also share a common mission. And the other great thing about ECC is we exist solely to put on this conference. And so we want to put on a conference that's going to draw a certain type of professional and and bring them here to talk about a certain topic list. And the people that are responsible for putting on the conference spend a lot of hours making sure that you get some value out of out of the price of admission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so kind of speaking towards the conference in general, can you give, I guess, any of the viewers and listeners a little sneak peek about what the agenda's like for coming up in August?
Oh yeah, well, let's just say that people, resources, and tools and techniques have been a common concern across the board for a little while. So the speaker slate that we put together, again, it's a conference, so we're going there to see speakers, and the speaker slate that we put together does a great job of addressing that. One of our perennial favorites is a gentleman by the name of Peter Zeihan, and he's a eco-political strategist, and then he does talk about both a number of topics that converge but are not normally related. So we talk about geopolitical military strategy, maxed in with economics, married up with immigration, and just your overall demographics. And I think he's able to put his worldview into a context that we understand, even if it's not necessarily oil and gas related.
He puts the jigsaw together, jigsaw puzzle together.
He helps us do that, yeah. And so we also have we have always speakers that are economists. It's funny, all of us engineers and contractors, we love hearing economists speak.
Yeah.
And they typically talk about the general state of the industry and why the dollars are flowing a certain way that they do. And we're bringing in Stephen Dubner from Freakonomics, who's not normally associated with the oil and gas industry. So, but a couple months ago, he re-aired a past episode where he talked about efficiency in the construction industry and how our industry is lagging a little bit behind some of the other major industries that have grown steadily in productivity over the years. And he explored a couple of reasons there why. There's been many articles written about it, but I believe that he brought a unique perspective. So we wanted to share that with the greater community.
He's actually a great speaker, by the way. I've seen him before. I've seen him speak before. Yeah, it is kind of funny that you mentioned that. You could sit there and listen to an economist or someone like that just speaking, and the way they put everything together, you're like, well, that just makes a lot more sense now. Why this thing that I would think had nothing to do with anything somehow affects my industry, and here's how.
Exactly. And the theme of our conference this year is Ignite, and what we wanted to do is put a little bit more action into the messaging that we're putting through. In the past couple of years, it's been prepare, get ready to lift off, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. We wanted to have that blast off piece.
Okay.
So one of the speakers is also going to be Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who landed the plane in the Hudson River.
Sure, yeah.
And I think a lot of that is more, there's a certain, hey, I just want to hear that story. But I think it also relates to our message of Ignite. It's action. It wasn't checklists. It wasn't a very ponderous, glacially slow approach to saving a bunch of people. It's just a person was put in a place where they had to act, and they did. And fortunately for everybody, it worked out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of that relates to the industry today. So yeah, it's a story about a guy flying a plane, but I think that everybody in the audience is going to be able to relate somewhat to that, based on the people that we attract to the conference.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And again, thank you again for giving us a couple minutes of your time. So my last question is, for people who are listening to this that are interested more about ECC Annual or just ECC in general, where can they go to find out more information about it?
Well, there is a couple of places, and I'll put the caveat in there is that this organization is mostly a volunteer basis, so we don't have a team full of professionals putting together our web presence. Mm-hmm. But we do have a website.
That's why you need AI, just like the industry needs.
Exactly. I think so. The website, I believe, is eccperspectives.org. Mm-hmm. But we also have a very vibrant LinkedIn presence, and I think that if you go and look for ECC, and we always tag ECC with perspectives because just Googling ECC gets you in a number of different places that you may not want to go. So even in LinkedIn, if you go to ECC and perspectives, you'll find our group, and we do try to keep that updated, and each member will try to post something, and I think that just reviewing that information will give you a good understanding of what we're all about.
Awesome. And so I know specifically for the conference is ecc-conference.org as well. That'll get you to another site that will actually show you a little bit more about, I guess, the agenda and everything like that. So with that, Dan, really can't thank you enough for giving us a couple minutes of your time. We really appreciate it. And really we want to thank all of you for joining us on this very special edition of the Main Column live from the ECC Sponsors Only session.